United of California, and a family victim of a crime, the family of a victim of a crime. I've got Board of Equalization former state senator and currently a Board of Equalization member, Ted Gaines. And myself. Again, my name is Topo Padilla, and I'll be speaking on behalf of the Golden State Bail Agents Association today. So first, I'd like to bring Senator Brian Dahle.
Well, thank you, Topo, and good morning. Here we are again in front of the Capitol, the last couple of days of session, where we've seen in the past bills like SB 1042, which is a bill to stop human trafficking and sex trafficking of a woman, which died in committee. Today we have SB 262, which is a bill that will allow free bail, so you can get out on bail. What about the victims here in California? It's almost a year ago. Kate was murdered, her dogs were killed, her car was set on fire right here in Sacramento. It's all because Gavin Newsom and the elitist Democrats in this building who are letting criminals out earlier. Gavin Newsom's parole board let out Smiley Martin, who just here on K Street shot up 100 rounds and killed 6 people. Californians are under attack by elitist Democrats in this building, including Gavin Newsom. It is time that we stand up for the victims. Californians don't feel safe enough to let their children walk down our streets or go out in the evening. In the building that my son works in right here on K Street, there are bullet holes in the building from the Smiley Martin shoot up. It is not safe in California. It's time we put criminals where they belong, off the streets and in prison or in jail until they serve their time and they can do restitution for what they did to the victims of California. Make no mistake, if we do not stop or we do not change this legislature and the governor, California is going to continue to not be safe. Thank you, Topo, for having me. I stand with Crime Victims United and with Dan and people that have lost their loved ones in California. It's time for change. Thank you.
And next, I'd like to bring up here to speak to you is somebody that I wish I didn't. Every time I meet a family member of a victim of a crime who's deceased due to a murder, I say to them often, I wish I never met you. And I'm sad that I had to meet Dan Tibbetts under these circumstances, because his sister, Mary Kate Tibbetts, known as Kate, was a wonderful member of this community. A wonderful human being who so many loved and respected and cared for. And now Dan fights on in her memory in hopes that another victim like Kate doesn't happen. So with that, Dan Tibbetts.
My sister Mary Kate Tibbetts was murdered in her home on September 3rd, 2021. My sister died because of what I refer to as a political perfect storm. First off, the person who killed my sister in 2018, he was in prison for his second violent felony. But because of the implementation of Prop 57 and, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation implementation of Prop 57, he was released well early of his sentence. Second, this person was arrested in the spring of 2021 for stealing a car, but because that crime was decriminalized under Prop 47, he was released. And thirdly, when he was released under the emergency provisions for zero bail in the state. He failed to appear for his arraignment and therefore had a warrant out for his arrest at the time he paid a visit to my sister and murdered her. Yolo County District Attorney Jeff Reisig has recently stated that in Yolo County implementation of zero bail policy, 70% of those who were released on zero bail committed follow-on crimes, some violent. This is because bail bond agents served to monitor the behavior of those released on bail and assure that they appear for their follow-on court appearances, their arraignments, pretrials, and trials. Without a bail system, the onus of babysitting these accused released would fall on law enforcement, which is already understaffed and underfunded. During the pandemic and the emergency implementation of the zero bail policy, it became painfully obvious that law enforcement is not able to take this role on. Senate Bill 262 will increase crime by enshrining a failed zero bail policy, whether it's called zero bail or ability to pay. It's a failed policy. Further, it disregards the vote of 56% of the population of this state for Prop 25 in 2020 who voted to keep the current money bail system. In essence, Senate Bill 262 is an attempt backdoor to overturn the will of the voters of the state of California. And it would force the cost of this onto the taxpayers of the state, cost currently borne by the bail industry and by the accused. California elected officials for too long have been placating criminals, and at the cost of the health and the well-being of the constituents, the law-abiding citizens of our great state. For the well-being of each constituent of every assembly member, I urge the Assembly to vote no on Senate Bill 262. Thank you.
I'll just say this, as I spoke to Dan in the last few days, he said, I'm not out here advocating for bail. I'm out here advocating for public safety. This is just a piece in the puzzle. And I do want to remind you that the people that are behind me will be here for questions and answers after this press conference. I next want to bring up here to speak is a gentleman that represents a very beautiful, wonderful county right up here in El Dorado County as their district attorney, but someone who's also served as the immediate past president of the California District Attorneys Association. And this gentleman, like a few of our other DAs in this region, are a force to be reckoned with, and they will stand up against the most populous counties and the smallest counties, but he has one thing in mind, and that public safety in his community comes first. And with that, I'd like to invite Vern Pearson.
Thank you. Good morning. We have to ask ourselves, why are we here in the waning days of the legislative session discussing a bill that was just amended in the last few days? It just came out in print the end of last week. Think about that question for a moment. A reporter, over the last few weeks, we had a feeling that this bill was going to be amended and it was coming back after being placed inactive for a full year, and trying to get the information about what would the amendments be. Why does someone wait to the last possible moment to gut and amend a bill and then simply say, well, it really doesn't do that much anymore? Why would someone do that? Ask yourself that question as you're looking at this. They stopped calling it zero bail because of the defeat of Proposition 25. Let's remember what Prop 25 was. It was the zero bail bill that by referendum went to the voters of the state of California. 26% or 56% of Californians objected and voted against zero bail. So they stopped calling it zero bail. They do an 11th hour amendment, and they found a way to manipulate the system in the now version of 262 that has the same result. You can call it something different, but it still is zero bail. By effectively killing and damaging the bail system, which is part of the system of criminal justice safety here in the state of California. reject 262 and this fraud that its author is trying to perpetrate. Thank you.
And next, I would like to bring a former state senator, someone who's worked in this building for a very long time, and fought for California. And he is now on the Board of Equalization, and that is Senator Ted Gaines.
Yeah, it's a very grim circumstance as to why we are here. And it's very scary in terms of what's happening in the state of California. So when I think of my family, I think of my 6 children, I think of my 7 grandchildren, a couple more coming soon. Don't we have a right to be safe in our state? Isn't that a basic tenet of our U.S. Constitution? So why are we having to fight these battles that are really common sense? And so when I take a look at SB 262, it is completely upside down and makes absolutely no sense. And I'm so sorry in terms of what happened to Kate. And Dan, I'm sorry you have to be here and fight this fight. But we all must fight, and we've got to make sure that we can do all that we can to save our families, to have that simple notion that we can go to bed in our homes and feel safe and wake up in the morning. So please help us in terms of getting the word out. We need to make sure that the legislature is pressured and that this bill does not see the light of day. Thank you.
And next, I'd like to bring up, in the absence of Nina Salerno, the president of Crime Victims United, who could not get out of a court date, but somebody, again, I came to know through the unfortunate circumstances of her her family having to be a victim of a crime. So that is board member Debbie Boyd.
Thank you. I'm just troubled today as I hear more and more about where we're headed with SB 262. And as a board member and on behalf of Nina Salerno, our president, who, as Topo mentioned, is unable to be here today due to a court conflict, I want to make it very clear that Crime Victims United strongly opposes Senate Bill 262. Even with the amendments, this bill is a dangerous risk to public safety and to a state that is already being plagued by a violent crime wave. We'd like to remind you that the voters, your constituents, want bail. They want public safety. The voters made that very clear with the passage of Proposition 25 by 56%, which repealed SB 10. SB 10 was a direct assault on public safety and the constitutional rights of crime victims by attempting to create a zero bail policy. SB 262, as was previously stated, is clearly a backdoor attempt to usurp the will of the voters. SB 262 is clearly out of touch with the reality of the violent crime in the state of California. Consistent with the report released on August 23rd of 2022 in Yolo County alone, 70% of those released on zero bail in 2020 and 2021 reoffended. The numbers prove that. This included violent crimes such as rape and murder. This also means there were 70% more innocent victims. This is not something our elected leaders should turn their backs on. Lastly, SB 262 completely ignores the constitutional rights of crime victims. Crime victims deserve to have justice. They deserve to have their day in court and their voices heard. The communities of California deserve to have public safety preserved and protected from crime. On a personal note, what's really driven my passion to really ensure public safety is intact and crime victims are not continuously victimized, and that innocent victims don't find themselves in a horrific situation, is in 2005, my daughter Christy Wilson was kidnapped murdered, and her body hidden in Placer County. It took 15 years of appeal after appeal after appeal. A lot of people thought her killer was actually innocent. He was convicted, however, without her body. And he was convicted as what? A second striker. Why? Because several years prior, he had actually kidnapped and raped another woman. And what did we not learn about that? Because today, here we stand fighting for this again, which we learned several years ago. This person hadn't even been rehabilitated, and he was let go on probation. Didn't even see jail time. Fast forward year after year, multiple people were victimized, and my daughter ultimately left this earth because of this criminal. Please, 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 let's not revert back and forget all those lessons learned that we had embraced so many years ago. Thank you.
I'm now going to speak on behalf of the bail industry, an industry I've been involved in for 39 years. Again, as I said in the beginning, my name is Topo Padilla. I'm the past president of the Golden State Bail Agents Association. And I've been in this business for 39 years. My father, Greg, luckily enough, got into this industry in 1979. And I want to talk to you about the content of what SB 262 does and why we are so passionately fighting against it. As a bail bondsman, I have a job to do. I have one job to do. That's make sure that somebody shows up to court. Now, there's several factors that go into that provision of how we get somebody to appear in court. But the fact of the matter is, we have a job to do in underwriting a bail bond, getting people out of jail because they have that constitutional right in this great country we live in. And that is our job. And what SB 262 would do is it says if I bail somebody out of jail and the case is dismissed, our charges are not filed, that I must return 90% of the premium that I collected. Well, what it is another way to skin a cat, because you see, there's a very sizable group in this building that have one objective, and they don't care what that objective does to public safety. They have an objective to eliminate the bail bond industry. That's it. That's all they want to do. And this will, in fact, eliminate our industry. And for that, I tell you what has gone on here in the darkness of the night of them bringing this bill back last week, putting it on and it could be voted on as soon as this afternoon. They could vote on it. And the sad thing is, many of these legislators in here do not know what it means. They don't understand it. Just like things that are done all the time. Well, I'll have to read the bill to know what's in it. But meanwhile, I'm going to vote on it. So the fact of the matter is this. This is about public safety. This isn't about me and my job. This isn't about my industry. This is about these two that were victims of crime. This is about other people that are not here to stand up for victims of crime. This is about these two gentlemen and the ladies and the men and women that fight in that building for our public safety, but are only smashed because of what a caucus says or what their leader says. They need to stand up and stand up for their constituents. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to give you the opportunity to speak to or ask any questions of any of the speakers that have joined us today. And again, thank you all very much for being here.
Are there any measures that you guys will hope to get written in before this thing goes to a vote?
No, so we're up against a deadline right now where we have the bills have to be in print for 72 hours before they can be voted on. They cannot be changed, and we're up to the last 72 hours, which will be tonight. Then we get out Wednesday morning at 12 a.m. We're done. So there's no opportunity to change it. That's what this is about. This is about them at the the last inning of the day putting something in that cannot be changed, and that happens all the time in this building. The elitist Democrats and Gavin Newsom, they're playing tricks on the people of California. And that's what's going on here. SB 262 was sitting for a year on the inactive file and came off last night or yesterday, and then they amended it, and that's what's going on here. It's quite frankly the elitist Democrats in this building playing tricks on California while there's no ability to change it. That's why we're having this press conference today. It's to let people know you either need to remove these people out of the building or you need to call your legislator and make sure that they know that this is a very bad bill, and criminals are going to be let out on our streets, and victims, as you heard here earlier, who've lost family members due to early release of criminals and people not held accountable for their crimes.
And if I might just add a follow-on statement, Senator Hertzberg pulled the bill last year 3 days after my sister was murdered. And because of my sister's murder, which he referred to as Topo mentioned, he referred to my sister's murder as the incident. The brutal murder of my sister, he feared would, and my sister, as I stated before, part of the perfect storm that led to her murder was Zero Bell. He did not want his fellow legislators to vote no on it out of their fear of being seen as soft on crime. This bill is not just soft on crime, it's pro-crime. There's nothing criminal justice about it, it's pro-crime.
Anybody else?
What I can't understand is why wouldn't anybody want it this way? Why wouldn't everybody in the state, and I come from New York, want to have it safe and prevent criminals from being released? Why would anybody want it any other way? And I bet you that no politician on the other side can answer that question that I just asked. But I'd like to hear from you again.
We ask ourselves that question every day. Why is it that Californians have to suffer? Why is it that this is pro-crime?
Yeah.
It's a manipulation of language on a bill that is going to allow, it's basically a Zero Bell bill, and they're going to tweak the words a little bit. But at the end of the day,